Hi everyone. Uh, so today, we are going to talk about how we can consume configuration data from Azure App Configuration. So, uh, so let's start with, of course, about me. I'm originally from Sri Lanka and currently based in Auckland, New Zealand, and I'm a Microsoft MVP since 2014. My I'm basically on the developer technologies area. So so you can find me on Twitter on here. I have provided Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course I'm maintaining my blog at this address given on this slide. So to start off with the topic, let's first understand why Microsoft has came up with Azure App Configuration. So for instance, right now, to manage app settings, there's like variety of ways. Basically, what we most of the time what we do is we are maintaining app settings file, and we will have a main app settings file and environmental specific app settings files, and then we have environment variables, likewise. And then, so if you have like one application, which is then it's completely fine. So, but let's say you have microservices and you have like many different services. And most of the time, you might find this situation that most all your services share some specific app settings. I mean, it's common among across your entire application. So in that case, I mean, it's kind of like a pain if you are to manage like the settings in app settings, you will have to deploy. So if it's Azure, when once you deploy, you have this app settings section where you can insert the settings. And if you have like say 10 different services, you will have to copy paste like 10 different you will have to copy paste into 10 different services, which is of course a pain. And then what I mean, if we can have the ability to maintain all these settings from one single place, it will be really make our lives easier. I mean, especially on the DevOps side, I believe you guys would agree. So that's why Microsoft has came up with Azure App Configuration. So it was generally available since February 2020, but even before that, it was on preview stage. It was there for like couple of months, but now it's like maybe less than 10 less than 10 months. I mean, it has gone to public. So the main features of Azure App Configuration is uh, I mean, centrally managed key value pairs, and it has the ability to integrate with Azure Key Vault. So, I mean, in app configuration, it's just basically key value pairs. So you have the key and the value. If someone can will someone if someone gets the access to it, they can just see it. So we are usually we maintain secrets and all those certificates kind of things in Azure Key Vault. So it has the ability to integrate, basically pick up from the secrets or keys from Azure Key Vault, and then you have the ability to compare. I will show you I mean, all of these. So then we have the history, for instance. Let's say we have this key and someone has changed it and suddenly something is broken. So we can have a look and see what settings has been changed during the past. I mean, uh, the, in the history, and we can easily import and export. We can import from another app configuration, we can import from app settings file, etc. And same way we can export to a target app configuration or another app service or just a JSON. And then we can restore, for instance, we can restore to a point in time in the past. And there's this nice feature which is introduced, feature flags. And then we have the management REST API. So if you want, even using Azure CLI, you can just create keys, delete keys, update keys, etc. And using that feature, uh, Azure DevOps has the ability to maintain or pull down configuration from Azure App Configuration and use it as variables. So it's pretty neat. I don't have much of the slides, so I think it's just this slide, and then let's jump onto the demo. Yeah, so right. So I mean, on this demo, mostly I'm going to be using an Azure Function app, and then of course some of the features I'm going to demo, I will be using a web API. So let's have a look at the solution first. So on the functions project, let's see what I have already installed a couple of dependencies. So I have installed Azure Identity. You will see why I have installed Azure Identity. Then I have the Azure Functions extensions because I'm going to be using dependency injection in Azure Functions. And I'm gonna need the startup to set up the app configuration as well. So that's why I need this library. And then this is the library that we're gonna need to basically uh, import Azure App Configuration settings. And then I have this Microsoft Feature Management for feature management stuff, and then the SDK functions. So I have this function, which is a hello function. So here in the constructor, I have injected a configuration and a feature manager, and here this is a HTTP trigger, and here basically I have this feature flag which is configuring using this local setting JSON, which I will show. So here I'm checking if it's enabled, I'm going to show the KV secrets. So here I'm just pulling down some of the app configuration keys, and return it. So in the startup, it's just there's nothing over here for now. It's just we are going to start writing code, and then uh, we have it's a function startup. Okay, so I just realized that I haven't shown you how we can create Azure App Configuration. So maybe let's just go to the Azure portal. So inside the Azure portal, how it's the creating an app configuration is pretty easy. So you just need to create an ad, and then you can look up app configuration. And once you go there, you just need to create the subscription, the resource group, resource name, the location, and the pricing tier. So there's this free pricing tier which has some limitations, but then there's the standard. And then you can just hit next and next and next, and confirm. Then you should be able to create an app configuration. So I don't want to create it now. I have already created one. So this is basically the app configuration service. It's a managed service. So we have access keys. That's access keys is basically for you to consume the app configuration, which we will use some of them. And uh, there's this configuration exploit. So this is where we maintain all the keys. So I mean, if we are to create a new one, it's a key value pair. It's key value. I can put the key, and then I can put the value, and there's this option label. So the label you can think of as another clarification, or rather dimension, so which you can categorize the things. So here, for instance, you can basically, here in this case, I have two labels. One is demo and development. So you can have environment. If you want environment specific labels, you can add that one in. Or if you want region specific ones, or if you want version specific ones, for instance, if this thing should be displayed, if the application is in beta, then these settings should get picked up. If it's in production, these things should get picked up likewise. And then you have, alternatively, you can put the content type as well. And then uh, I've told you that it has the integration to Azure Key Vault. So if you want the key, you can just put the key. Again, you can select the label, subscription where your Key Vault residing in, resource group, Key Vault. So when you put the Key Vault, you will see all its secrets. And then, so in the Key Vault, we can have different versions. So you can pick the version and it will come up. So for the demo, okay, and another thing is, if you want to have a look at the history of the things, so you can click on a key, you can check the history. So it has the history and the different values. And then, so here, I mean, you can, one of the things is this label is not mandatory, it's optional. So the logic is, if there's no label, you can I mean, we can use this logic for something like whatever the common ones, we can eliminate the label, and if you want label specific ones, you can put the label. So you will understand once we start writing the code. And there's the restore option that I mentioned about. So we can go ahead and restore. We can pick a date and then restore back onto that time. And you can compare. For example, here I will just compare demo versus development. And you can see, okay, for the development environment, I have like 5 keys. For the demo environment, I have just 1 key. So it's just this demo key is just for the demonstration. And then there's this option to import and export. So if you click on import, you can select the service if it's another app configuration or app service or another configuration file. The same way you can export. You can export into app configuration. So if you select app configuration, you need to select the target resource. You can select the app service, or you can put the configuration. So it's really nice. Right. So going back to the configuration explorer. So I have these keys. So for now, you can just ignore the first one. And here I have, you can notice that I have used slash. So we can basically organize the keys in Azure App Configuration in different ways. One of the ways is something using this one, and then of course you can put colon to kind of like put nested keys. So I mostly use this approach. For example, if it's shared, I'm kind of like putting shared prefix with shared slash, and then application specific ones. So when in the code, I can say, okay, pull down all the keys starting from shared slash and the application slash, something like that. And here, this is my key vault value that I have added for the test purposes. And then there's this version key. So you can think of it as some set of keys. So here in this case, this key has 2 labels, one for demo and one for development. And this one, you can see there's no label specific values. It's just no label. So yeah, so that's on the app configuration side on the Azure portal. Now let's see how we can consume. So going back to our Visual Studio solution, so first I will run this. So before that, okay, I have the local settings, so the same keys as I have used over here. The only thing is the prefix is not there, but you can see how I'm going to do that. So let's just run it. just to make sure the things are working. Usually in the demos, things don't work. So here, this is the one. I'll just refresh. Okay, so you can see the sample value is not there. Let's see why. Going back to the function. Yes, so the sample value is shown, only the feature is enabled. So how we can manage features locally is through you need to put feature management colon and whatever the feature flag name. So I will just put it as true and let's run it again. This time it should come up. Okay, so it's fine. It's working fine locally. Now let's see. Okay, I have done my tests and I'm going to use the settings in Azure and make sure it runs locally. So I don't want these keys anymore. So I'm going to uncomment this. So usually this can be these values can be secrets, but here for the demo, I'm just putting it inside local settings.json. So I have the Azure App Configuration base URL, the label that I'm going to be using for this specific application, and what is the key prefix for this application specific settings, and what is the key prefix for the shared specific ones. So it's shared, it's AAC demo functions, and it's development. And now and you can see I have used the same. So the prefix is the same and the shared one. Now, okay, so one of the reasons I used functions for the demo is, I mean, if it's working in Azure Functions, it's going to be definitely working on Web API, but vice versa is, I mean, the reverse is not actually the same. So here I have the startup file and which derived from function startup, and I need to override configure and configuration and configure. So you won't be seeing this method if you haven't used function extension 1.1. If it's less than that, you basically won't be able to override this configuration. So this one is responsible for customizing our application configuration as the name suggests. So first what I would do is I would just read the environment, read the local settings files because I'm going to be using those. So I'm using the AC endpoint, app key prefix, shared key prefix, and the AC label. So the base URL you can find in over here, the endpoint, or even in access keys. It's this one over here. So that's the only thing I want. I'm not using the connection string, so I will explain you why. So then let's start writing some code. So here in the builder, I'm going to configure the builder. And what I'm going to do is I can add different things. I can add environment variables, add JSON file. Of course, if you want app settings, I mean, the ones who are familiar with something like this. So if you want to be using something like this in your functions app, you can still do so. You can just add JSON file. And then for this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add Azure App Configuration. So in the options, it has two overrides. I'm not going to be using which uses connection string one. So I'm going to be using the other one, which expects an action which will configure the options. So here, yeah. So in the options, first we need to do is we need to connect. So to connect again, there's two overrides, one for connection string and the other one for using the endpoint and the credentials. So that's the one that we are going to be using. So it's a URI. So I'll just choose new URI and AAC endpoint. And we need to use credentials. So I will just choose create a variable. Yeah, right. So here I am just connecting to the Azure App Configuration using this default Azure credential option. So this default Azure credential option is an important thing. So basically what it would do is we have like 7 different credential types that it will basically try all this one by one in this given node. So it will first try environment credential is there, then it will try managed identity credential is there, etc. So here I'm just putting something like this default Azure credential, nothing else. And then what we need to do is we have, so imagine that you in your app configuration you have another keys which is being used by another application. So your application doesn't need to know about those. So because of that, we have the option of filtering out whatever we thinks we need. So we can do select. So what are the ones that we are going to need? So we are going to need everything starting with our application specific items, and then you have the option to filter the label. For the label filter, I want everything which has no label, and then I need everything which has which our application is expecting. So in this case, it's going to be the development value. And then, so here we have the app specific ones, but still I'm going to need the shared ones. And then the thing is, so if I go to my function, you can see the function expects only the without the prefix. So there's this option to skip the prefix. So I can do something like this. I'm going to uh, trim the app key prefix, and then I'm going to skip the shared key prefix. And then since our application, our Azure App Configuration uses a key vault, we need to set up the key vault. So for that one, I can do configure key vault. Another, let's configure the key vault. For the key vault, uh, let's see what are the options we have. So we need to set the credential. So the credential is going to be the token credentials that we have specified. It's a method. Yeah, so everything seems fine. So the option is, okay, now what we need to do is there's a couple of things. If you want to if you want to run this locally, you need to do a couple of things, because when you run this, I mean, if you think about it, this default Azure credential, we don't have any connectivity, or we haven't provided any connection string. So how it's going to work? How it's going to work is in Visual Studio, there's this option, uh, Azure Service Authentication. So here you will see all your accounts. So here, this is the account that I have used to create the Azure App Configuration. So first you need to select this one, and then let's say inside your, I mean, in your account you have multiple Azure tenants. So in that case, what you need to do is you need to uh, first you can log in. So here I think I have logged in. So and you can see all your accounts, different accounts. So here for my email address, I have all these different tenants, and I need to set the active tenant. So in this case, I think it's uh, Microsoft Azure sponsorship, which I have already set. So I can verify it by AC account show. So you just need to make sure these ones are the correct ones. I mean, it should be the correct ones where your Azure app configuration is residing on. So once you do that, you should be all good. Now first, let's run this. Now I should be getting values from, so these are my local values. Now the values should get changed to the values in the Azure app configuration. So it's starting up. Yeah. And let's refresh. Okay, the URL couldn't be determined. Let's see why is that. Okay, I have used AAC label instead of AAC endpoint. I'm just checking I'm not sleeping because it's like 2 a.m. over here. Yeah, it takes time because it needs to connect to the app configuration, pull down the keys. Okay, it's up and running. Let's refresh. Okay, so now it's basically it has picked up values from the Azure App Configuration, but you can see still this value is not there because right now I'm not picking up the feature flag values or the features from local. So where is it in Azure? Where is that one in Azure? So in AAC, there's this nice feature which is Feature Manager. I'm surprised. So it's enabled, but still it wasn't picked up. Okay, that's because we haven't configured the feature flags. So I'm going to my setup and I'm going to configure the features, use a feature flags. Let's configure the feature flag options. And we need to specify what features we are going to pull down. So the label is AAC label. And there's different options you can set, something like the cache expiration interval. I mean, for you there might be scenarios you don't, the feature flags might not change very often, so it might be changing like maybe 7 days. So you can set the time so we don't, the application doesn't have to look for the check the app configuration for the features. Let's run it. So hmm, still running. So that's why, I mean, people say that you shouldn't be using Azure App Configuration when you are working locally. But for the demo, of course, we need to. So, okay, so it shows. So this is where I have the feature flags. So inside the feature manager, I can add the name, the label, description, and there's this nice option to filter features. Maybe you can go through these. You can target by you can by target, by time window, etc. Right. So now, okay. So things are running fine locally. Now let's see how we can, once we deploy this, how it's going to work. So here I have this sample Azure function which I have already deployed. Let's go back to the Azure function. This is my function app which is deployed. So here, couple of interesting things. So inside the configuration, of course, I have specified the app configuration, the same things that I have mentioned locally. For I have the base URL, I have the same things that I had in the locally. But one of the interesting thing is for your application to connect, you need to be able to connect to Azure App Configuration. For that one, you need to do, there's two options. You can use a system assigned managed identity or user assigned managed identity. I prefer use user assigned managed identity so I can have one and apply to all the different ones rather than apply to individual applications. So how we can create a managed identity is pretty actually easy. Let me just open up a new tab. Oh. So how you can do it? You can just go to wherever the resource group you want the user to be added in, add user assigned managed identity. Yeah, you can just the resource group, the region, and the name. That's about it. And then once you have created that one, you just need to go over here and find that user identity and add. Then there's another thing that you need to do. You need to go to the your Azure App Configuration, and inside access control, you need to add a role assignment, and you need to select App Configuration Data Reader, the one over here, and then you need to find the managed identity over here, and then add. Then if you are consuming the values from Azure App Configuration, consuming the values from Key Vault through the app configuration. Another thing that you need to do is you need to go to the Key Vault and define access policy for that managed identity, because when you consume the keys, it's when you consume the Azure Key Vault secrets, you are directly, even though we are configured them inside the Azure App Configuration, Azure, it's like Azure App Configuration won't get the keys for you. You will be getting it directly. So that specific user needs to have access. And another thing is, if you're running locally, you just need to make sure whatever the account that you have specified over here has the same access. Just like I have mentioned now, the user needs to have access to read the keys inside the app configuration, and then you need to have access policy defined for your key vault with for with whatever the options you need. So here in this case, I have only for this manage user identity, I have get permissions for secrets. That's about it. So now I mean, once you set those up, you should be able to uh, read the keys and the secrets. Another important thing is, uh, let's go back to our app configuration. And if you go to feature manager and if you disable these are, it's not going to get changed. I mean, right now it's still showing. So, I mean, if you keep this here and keep this like this, and if you access like after 1 hour, you will see that it's changed. The reason for that one is these are serverless things. I mean, the Azure functions are serverless. So the next time you hit it, it will spin up a new instance and it will read the app configurations again. So that's why you will see the latest ones. But let's see how we can. So this is kind of like a limitation. Maybe I'm not sure whether it's allowed in Azure functions, but at least I couldn't find it. So that's why I have this web API application. So I'm going to set it as startup project. Here I have again a controller, the same controller I had in the Azure function, and here the only difference is I am configuring the Azure App Configuration in the program. It's early in the pipeline, early in the middleware. So just the same thing. And then I have two additional options like configure refresh. I have the configure refresh. I will explain it why what this one is. And then in the startup, I have added feature management just like I have did in the functions I have done, and then I have this use app configuration middleware, which is quite important. First, let's run this. It takes time because, of course, it needs to read the data from Azure App Configuration. So here, it's not showing the key vault value because the feature flag is disabled. I'm going to enable it and let's refresh. I need to refresh like a couple of times. Okay, it's displayed. Again, to make sure, let's disable it and refresh. Okay, it's disabled. So this is working nicely in API or web APIs, but not in Azure functions. So the reason is I believe it's not using this Azure App Configuration middleware because we don't have this option in functions, but here we have it. Another thing is, another common issue is, right, so let's say you have these functions and your app is still running. I haven't stopped it. And then I'm going to change the values. So will I have to restart my app for those to be affected? Let's say I'm going to change the value on here, shared for all the applications. I will just do updated on uppercase. I have saved it. Let's refresh. Basically, where I have changed the value is demo shared key. It's this one over here. Let's refresh. So you can see it's still not updated. I mean, for the feature flags, it was updated, but here it's not. So it won't get updated because we need to configure it. So how we can configure it is if I go back to the program where I have configured the app configuration, I have this option. So I'm configuring the refresh, but I'm configuring the refresh based on another key. For example, this is the key. So how this works is, I mean, if I change any of the values, it won't work, but I need to change this key and then on this label, and there's this option. If I change this version value of this version, then should all my uh, should it refresh all the key values? So now let's go ahead and change the value of this version property, version key. I'm going to change it to true. Let's apply it, and now the expectation is we should be seeing the value, we should be seeing updated over here. Let's refresh. Yeah, so you can see it takes some time because I think, did I put any cache? No, I put the cache for the feature flags. It takes some time, a bit of time. So that's basically it about the Azure App Configuration. So I believe you got an understanding on very basic understanding on how you can configure an app configuration in Azure Functions app. And then of course, once you know the basics, you can do the same thing for your REST APIs, etc. Uh, yes, so I believe that's about it for today. So thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the Sri Lankan DevOps community for having me in here. So hopefully I'll catch you guys up with another session sometime soon. Uh, Thank you and take care.